Hey, good morning for you on the West Coast, those of you on the West Coast, and for those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon. It's a beautiful sunny day here, and I'm hoping you're having as good a day as I am. I'm excited to hit today's topic, 7-hour rule to get someone to know, like, and trust you in the federal market. So we're going to dive into that. I wanted to start by briefly just talking about something that's, let me just turn this little scroll bar off. Something that's important for me that you understand, because in federal government contracting, what I try to teach people is that what you experience and what you're going to go through and your growth, it's not linear. It's exponential, right? And let me show you an image really quick, just so we're clear on what I'm talking about. So this guy here, and this is just a title screen for my 8A Stars 3 Accelerator program. I sell a program that's separate, but the reason this is good though is because I teach people with the 8A Stars 3 contract vehicle, but also you, if you're in government contracting, that sales and growth is not linear, meaning it goes from the bottom left directly to the top right, like this steady line. It also is not a hockey stick where it's flat lined and then until you hit a point of success and boom, it goes straight up in the air. That's called a hockey stick. Well, your success and what you're experiencing, you should see it as an exponential or compound growth, like year over year or effort over effort as you go forward. And you can see this kind of flat line as slowly is going up. And then you hit this point where this inflection point where it starts steadily going up. And when you understand that your efforts in federal government contracting and sales is about kind of doing this work, and at some point it just begins to pay off. And I'm actually going to do a a live sales training on, I think I called it, let me find it really quick, because I just wrote it down yesterday. It's something about, and I lost it, but basically it is being a small business owner in the federal market is lonely. So there's a lot of responsibility on you. But part of what we feel and the anxiety sometimes is we feel like we're doing all this stuff, but we're not seeing results. And that's why I just wanted to point out, in contracting in particular, or consultative sales, it's this exponential growth that happens, and you're going to put effort in and not see results. And then boom, one day it's going to start going up, right? That's the whole idea of being an overnight success in 10 years. Okay, let me get started. Let me flip it over. Thanks for everybody putting comments in and engaging on there. So you may have heard people talk about success in the federal government contracting world requires relationships, right? That people buy from those they know, like, and trust. Today, I'm going to teach you about the 7-hour rule required for people to know, like, and trust you, right? 7 hours to be able to help them know, like, and trust you. If you don't know who I am, let's get to know me. I'm Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my daily live sales training, where I provide processes and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. A process is going from A to Z. And when you follow a process, you achieve or you see predictable results. And that's what I want for you. And that's what I think about when I shape training for every single day that I come out here. Before we get started, help buyers, help me, and help the people in the community know who you are. In the chat, put your core competency, 2 or 3 words, along with your company name. And, as Amit did, I noticed from right when he got in, is let us know if you're open to connecting on LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn. It is a professional network. This training is with people who are government contractors or buyers, or the people who support us like PTAX and others. So if you're open to connections, put that in, but certainly put your company name and core competency so we can learn who you are. I want to make sure buyers and I remember who you are. Okay, let me just make sure I don't have anything scrolling there. All right, so let's get started with the 7-hour rule. I'm going to go through a lot. If you haven't been through my trainings before, I tend to do a fire hose. Today, I've got 20 tips that are going to be in this training, and so I know it's going to be an extra big fire hose coming at you. At the end, I'll tell you how you can get those tips to make it easier for you. But let's talk about what this 7-hour rule is, just to make sure we're all on the same page. When you think about marketing, which is what business development basically is, right? Capture is going after an opportunity, but business development is marketing, getting people to be aware of you. You can use all these different terms, right? Branding, et cetera. I use marketing. There's ideas out there, people bounce back and forth, but that you need to be able to touch or engage somebody for them to get to know, like, and trust you, for them to begin to even care about what you sell. And so I've always talked about having 60 marketing engagements or touches. And the reason I say this number 60 is because I've heard people say 20. And I'm a project manager. And one of the things we learn about project management or estimates is you figure out how much time it's going to take or how much money it's going to take, and then you triple it. And maybe you're lucky if you're right. And so for marketing engagements, when you think about how long will it take the Army to get to know me, or people in the Army that I want to reach out to, 60 engagements. But today I'm going to talk to you about not the number of touches, but this idea of a 7-hour rule. Engaging people where you're either, and some of the tips I'll talk about how to actually engage them, but engaging them passively where they're coming in and seeing stuff that you might put out. So an example is if somebody sees your capability statement and they begin to read it, then that time spent is working down that 7 hours of engagement with you. They're getting to know you through that. Another example is active. So if you're having a meeting with somebody, that's an active way of working on that 7 hours rule. You want somebody to be engaged with you. And I'm using that word loosely at the moment. And when I move forward into today's training, I'll give you exact examples of how you can get them to be engaged with you. But actively engaged, an example might be a meeting, right? And so you want to pay attention to those things. In government contracting, we are in the consultative or solution selling business. Even if you're selling products, you're in that stage. We're not in transactional unless you're selling, you're doing bids on parts where somebody's wanting a whole bunch of bolts or screws. That's a different sale. But what I'm talking about is services, construction. Construction to me is just another word for services. In those businesses, it's consultative or solution selling. You're discussing the requirements, et cetera. And I want you to keep that in mind, that that's far different than transactional sales. Transactional sales are like that bid I just said for parts or bolts. It's also, you can think about a car sale. You go in, you talk to the dealer, and you walk out basically with a car. When you go to the grocery store, that really is transactional sale. And the grocery store is selling you, if you don't know this, right? You go in with your list, and then you go over and you see all this stuff that you shouldn't eat is mid-eye level. On the end caps, if you walk into a grocery store or any other store, on the end caps are the things they're trying to push to you. But that's all transactional because you're going to feel this impulse, grab it, and buy it. Whether you talk to somebody or not, that's very quick. In our space, and the reason I talk about exponential growth is you're doing consultative selling. And these days, the consulting happens before you even meet somebody, right? I want to talk about this large prime. I just talked to somebody at a large prime today. And when I say large, billion-dollar firm, right? And I was just talking with her, and she was saying one of the things, we were talking about tips on how I can actually introduce small businesses that are ready for larges up to her. And she was saying one of the things I hate that happens with smalls is sometimes they come over and they just jump straight to the sale, if you will. They turn a consultative relationship into a transactional relationship. They walk up to the booth and say, hey, we're a woman-owned firm in construction. You're in construction. How can I get on your contract? Or, sometimes people walked up to her and would say, hey, how can we get on your mentor protege program? What we're missing sometimes when we do that is the whole consultative part, building a relationship, talking to people. And so we need them to get to know us before we jump right in for that sale. And you never really are jumping into the sale, because when you do enough consulting, people are going to say, how can you help me? Right? I've talked to you about my needs for a while now. How can you help me? They'll come to you. And so I want to talk about ways that you can get in front of buyers or teammates like this person I was talking about this morning, so they start to know you and then trust you. And from that, they will like you. So let's talk about what is KLT or know, like, and trust, right? And it's really straightforward for me that knowing somebody knows you just means they're aware of you. It doesn't mean really anything else, but they know you exist, right? And so if you know me, go ahead and put know me, or put KLT into the chat. I want to see KLT in there. So knowing is just an awareness of you. Do you guys know me? If you do, put KLT. Like is they think you're a good person, right? I want to engage with this person. It's not friends, right? We can become professional friends at some point, but I just get a good feeling that I can work with this person. Before it's even just trust, I get a good feeling they're liking you. They like you because of maybe some of the things you've done for them, right? And so if you like me, like you're coming to this training and you like me, put KLT into the chat, would you? And let's talk about the last one is trust. So trust is somebody else values you as a subject matter expert. They look to you almost as a trusted advisor, but certainly as a subject matter expert. If you see me as a subject matter expert, if you trust me to talk to you about federal sales, for example, put KLT into the chat. And the reason I'm having you put this into the chat is I want you to really understand KLT. Knowing is just being aware of you. You want people to know who you are, and then you want them to trust you, and then they will like you. I know the phrase is know, like, and trust, but the order I do it in is know, trust, and then like. I like you a lot better if I trust you. Okay, so if that's making sense, let's move on to, I don't need you to put this in the chat, but I want you to just think this question for yourself, right? I just told you what know, like, and trust are. What are you doing right now to get people to know, like, and trust you? Let's just break that down to the first one, right? What are you doing to get people to know you? Every day, are you doing something to make sure more and more buyers and potential teammates that fit with you know you? Just think about that, right? By putting the core competency earlier on, I said, put your company name and your core competency into the chat. By doing that, you're taking steps to help people know you, in particular, the people in this community who are in the chat and who come along later, because our training is watched by over 1,000 people. When you put your core competency in the chat, you're starting to help people know you, your core competency, and your company. That's where it begins. And that's why I try to get you to do that at the start of every training. Sometimes people know you long before, by the way, and this is something that's fun. I was talking with somebody yesterday who told me that they have been watching my content for over a year. Yesterday was the first time we ever met, but they had been watching me. And so for a year, I had been building trust with them. They had certainly begun to know who I am, right? But I had begun to build trust with them, and they began to like me through who they were seeing in the content or the things I shared out, social media in particular, because that's where we sell now, right? And that's what I want for you is as you move forward, some of your buyers can become aware of you long before you become aware of them. By the time you're able to have that first meeting, they might already have a strong knowing or knowledge. They know you, they like you, and they trust you, right? Because you're putting stuff out. And that's what we mean by exponential. You do this effort, and then all of a sudden you start seeing these meetings or these relationships happening because people know, like, and trust you through what you've done. And again, I'm going to give you 20 ideas on that. In fact, I'm going to move right into that. And I'm going to drive through 20 ideas for engaging and getting people to know, like, and trust you. And I'm just checking my time. So I get about 11, 12 minutes to drive forward on this with 20 ideas. These are in no particular order. I did try a general order of the easier stuff you might do in the first 10, and then going into just more involved stuff. So most of this you can do yourself. Some of this you might want to outsource or get somebody else on your team to help with. And so the second 10 begin to go into just more of a lift, but all of it will help people know, like, and trust you. And the more of this you do, the more your visibility is out there. Whatever official word you want, you just want people to know you, right? And that's where we're going to go. So the first step, first one is you want to be visible in the dynamic small business search tool. Dynamic small business search together with sam.gov registration, create your small business profile. That is the #1 market research tool of federal buyers. It's the only official registry or repository of small businesses and other enlargers, but small businesses that serve the government and could serve primes, right? I was talking with somebody today who was talking about their supplier portal as a large prime. They tend to go to their supplier portal to look. And what I teach people about DSBS is when you have your profile filled out correctly in dsbs.sba.gov, when you have it filled out correctly in there, it's easy for you to then fill out the supplier portal forms. But many of these large primes have sophisticated tools that the minute you put your UEI in, it goes to SAM, pulls all the data back in. And so these tools kind of work together. So that's one thing you can do for engagement, is by being where the buyers are going to look. And so that one tackles, when we think about know, like, and trust, most of these engagement tips are going to touch on one or the other. And so that one touches on knowing you. Second one is be in the supplier portal, right? So the first one is DSBS, second one is supplier portal. Third one, this tip goes into liking you. So what I wrote here was give without expectation. And what this means is, if you can help somebody, help them. If somebody asks for your help, give them help. And without expectation means I don't expect you're going to do something for me. So an example is, hey, do you know anybody in PEO Digital at the Navy? Oh, sure. I know this person's name and that person's name, but I'll give it to you if you'll put me on the contract. It's like, well, what? So now you're giving with expectation. But you could give without expectation, and that person will love you for it, right? Not just like you, they will love you for it. Look, they gave me a lead. They will then pay attention to who you are. And if there's a fit, you're going to be one of the first people they invite back because, hey, that person's nice. That person, and if you have what they need, that's why they bring you into their team or something. But if you give without expectation, it's what you want others to do with you, right? So if you understand what I'm talking about, that giving without expectation is how you are helping people like you, because you're not tying everything you can help them with to something you get. If you understand that idea of give without expectation, then put give in the chat. The third one is, that was the third one. Fourth one is follow their content. So this can be on social media in many places, but let me just stick with LinkedIn, which is my favorite. But if you have somebody you're trying to build a relationship with and really deepen the know, like, and trust with them, following their content is a way for them to begin to understand who you are and following them, right? If you haven't heard me say this, in LinkedIn, if you follow somebody, if you view their content, they see it. Their profile. If you follow their profile by clicking on the button that says follow, then they get a notice that says, hey, John just followed you. And if you engage, and I'll talk about this more in the next one here, is if you engage, number 5, on LinkedIn with that content, then they will see that engagement and they will appreciate it. None of us create content that we wish we did not get thumbs up and a comment. So if you come in and actually are engaging with a comment, hey, this was a great tip you provided, I appreciate it. I really especially like bullet number 3 where it said this or something. You're helping their content begin to surface up on some social media platform like LinkedIn. And I have a whole separate course on just how to really build relationships in LinkedIn. But if you're doing that, if you're following and engaging on LinkedIn, step 4 and step 5, then these people will begin to know who you are, right? If you do a thumbs up, they'll look in and see your profile. If you're the first one or one of the first people to comment, they're certainly going to look in if your comments are relevant to what they're trying to do, right? Okay, so number 6, let me just see how I'm pacing myself. Number 6 is connect on LinkedIn. So I talked about viewing a profile and then following a profile. Connecting on LinkedIn. When you connect on LinkedIn, you're now taking this to the next level, and they will know you. And if they connect with you, they'll follow your content. And so it's a way for them to begin to trust you. They'll see what content you're putting out. And I'll talk about that in a second. But by connecting, you've taken the next step in a relationship, right? We've agreed to start dating exclusively. Well, not exclusively, but you get the point, right? And so this idea, as you move forward, of connecting with somebody, you're building your network and you're strategically building it within the GovCon space or within the Army space if that's the customer you're trying to grow. So if you're following where I'm going with this idea of how you can work on the 7-hour rules towards know, like, and trust through engagement on LinkedIn, put hashtag LinkedIn into the chat. Just let me know that you're tracking on this idea of LinkedIn, and I'm going to keep talking about LinkedIn for a second. Number 7 is follow and engage with their connections. So this is a little different. If you just connected with them, you can begin to engage with their second or their first connections, your second connections. And by doing this and engaging with the stuff that they're engaging with, you're beginning to build your visibility from the knowing part, right? So it's all bouncing right back and forth between KLT. In this part, you're increasing them being aware of you because you're engaging their contacts through them, if you will. So here's an example. Somebody shares out a post somebody else did, and I've seen this before. Like a CIO might share something out of the Army, and Bob here, a connection of mine, shares it out on their LinkedIn feed. Well, rather than jumping to that CIO's page and engaging there, I engage on Bob's sharing of the post and say, thanks a lot for sharing this, Bob. Hey, Sally, the CIO of the Army or something. Hey, Sally, I love this strategic document you dropped. It's awesome that you're sharing with the industry. I'm definitely interested in learning more about your emerging technology plan that's coming out or something. Well, I'm engaging Sally, but I'm doing it through Bob, my connection. So I know it sounds a little convoluted until you just look at LinkedIn and do this. It's pretty easy to do. And you just, again, keep it around your core competencies so it's genuine. Number 8, make introductions. This is the easiest thing you could do. Going back to give without expectations. If you know people, make introductions. Sometimes you can make introductions before anybody asks. If I see somebody in construction and somebody else, I might just make an introduction and say, I don't know if it's a fit for you, but you're both kind of in construction. I wanted to make sure you knew of each other. It's up to you to decide whether it's worth pursuing. And more often than not, they connect and at least have a very quick conversation online or offline to decide if it's worth furthering. But if I know people and I can put them together, that introduction costs me nothing. But both these people are happy, right? They're beginning to like me more because I'm making the introduction. They're actually beginning to know me more because, well, shoot, Neil just gave me an introduction. Let me remind myself, who's this Neil guy again? Oh, okay, I see what he's doing. And so when you do that without expectation, you're not trying to get in between them and say, hey, if it turns into money, make sure I'm part of it. So remember rule 3 about no expectation. The other thing is if somebody comes and asks you, hey, do you know anybody at PEO Digital? And you do, just give them the introduction. Say, here's that person. If it ever is worth you being on a team or something, they'll come back. Anybody who gets an introduction from you and doesn't come back to you wasn't worth doing business with anyways. But many times there'll be an introduction you can make where you do not belong in there. But just make introductions is number 8. That's such a great way to engage and help people know, like, and trust you. Most importantly, like you, right? Have intro meetings. And so I talked about these 2 construction people. Let's take them, for example. But you can also do this with federal buyers. Have introduction meetings, 15 minutes, 30-minute meetings. I generally try not to go beyond 30-minute for an intro meeting. That way it's easy for us to get out, right? The first date's at a coffee shop, not at a dinner, if you think about that. And the same thing, a 30-minute intro meeting means we're able to focus on, hey, what do you do? What do we do? Does it make sense for us to come together and have another meeting? This fits into all 3 categories of know, liking, and trusting. And at this point, it really is beginning to work on the trust and like, because hopefully they've begun to know you before you schedule the meeting to have an intro meeting. But number 9, intro meeting. Number 10, send an updated capability statement. One of the ways you can just keep in front of them, keep them knowing you, is to send an updated capability statement. And this doesn't just have to be for that small business specialist. It could be anybody out there. If you've got teaming partners, even especially small business teaming partners, well, reach out to them and say, hey, Tim, I just want to let you know we've got an updated capability statement. I just wanted to pass it your way, have you take a look at it, make sure you're aware of what we're doing. I'd love to connect and talk to you more about it. And actually, if you're willing, I'd love to get a copy of your capability statement so I can just be tracking on what you guys do in case I come across anything you might value hearing about, right? It's just giving and taking. And so it's one way to help them continue to know you. And it's also that last sentence where I said, send me your capability statement, is a way for them to like you, to go, oh, that was nice. And so, it's an easy step there. That's number 10. Just tracking my time. I'm going to pick up the pace because apparently 20 tips in a single session is a lot. Okay. The number 11 is use your authentic, Brian, I'm going to come back to your question in 1 second. So use your authentic, not your work voice. And what I mean is be you. Often I see people try to be professional because they think that's what they need. You don't need that, right? I think that especially those of you who have been to multiple trainings of mine, you've begun to get to know me. But if you would come here and you see me engaging with my kids, if you would see me down at the sailboat with, people, my friends in the sail community or whatever, Neil's Neil wherever I go. Not to go into third person here. But wherever I go, I'm me, right? It's the same way. I'm this energized when I'm looking at the sailboat. I want things to be dressed right. But sometimes in work, we put this professional voice out, and that actually hurts us. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is to be authentic. And that doesn't mean figure out what is your authentic. It just means be yourself. And the easiest way to see what yourself is just see how you are around your friends or your colleagues inside your office. However you are there in a meeting where you're talking, or you might be driving to something. Bring that in. When you do that, it goes a long way for people to like you and trust, because they don't feel like is this really Neil? Is this the real Neil? It feels a little packaged or something. You get me, warts and all, right? I'm not looking at a lot of chats, but I just saw a question and happened to notice it. What's the best way to get capability briefing? By the way, Brian, clarify that for me. Are you talking about get a capability briefing at an agency? Just clarify it. I'll try to look down there in a second. So a handful of others. I'm going to go through these pretty fast because I don't have time to cover them, but I will give you an opportunity to get these on a list. And I give you a handout for this. But number 12, share curated content. That means finding content. Let's say you're in AWS cloud migration. You can go to Amazon, find a piece of their content, share it out with your take on the content. Hey, Amazon just put out this great content. Here's my take, right? You can do that in elevators. You can do that in cloud. You can do that in cyber. You can do that everywhere. Somebody's got content that you can share out. And that's called curated content. Another thing is you can start a podcast, right? Don't overthink this, but an example of a podcast that you could do is just take that curated content and for 15 minutes, read your opinion about it. Hey, Amazon just put out the future. One of the things I love is Microsoft puts out every single week this update to those of us in the world that says, hey, here's what's coming out. If I was in the Microsoft business still, I would sit there and create a podcast just saying, hey, here's what's coming out. This is why agencies, you don't need to care about this one. You do want to track on this one. This is a good update. You can do things like that. And then you can evolve your podcast to be, something different. But in the beginning, you can just be sharing technical information that's easy for your buyers or teammates to consume while they drive or jog. Have a YouTube channel similar to a podcast and videos. I'm going to move past that one. Write a blog. In this case, really taking your own thoughts on what you do and what the customer could do and benefit. So an example to me of blogs, one of my favorite things is to be able to give people checklists of, hey, if you're going to migrate to the cloud, here's what you should be thinking about doing. The top 5 concerns migrating to the cloud. Or if I was going to do application migration to the cloud, I might say one tip for migrating to the cloud is do a application complexity rating. What that means is rate your applications in 3 categories: no complexity, medium complexity, and high complexity. That way you're migrating the no complexity early on, getting everybody over on those, and save your high complexity for later type thing, right? You can do something like that pretty quick if you stay within your core competency. This is why it's vital to be a subject matter expert on something. Schedule regular meetings is the next one. I see I got 2 minutes. So let me just rattle these last ones off and I'll give you a list. Schedule regular meetings. So make sure you have regular meetings. Helps people begin to trust you because they're interacting and talking with you. You can write white papers out there. Interview industry subject matter experts. I talked about this. You can do that for your videos or your podcast. But interviewing it takes somebody smart like you interviewing somebody else that's smart. And so the rest of us can listen to your conversation. Those are hugely helpful. Give freely. So not just give without expectation, but if you have stuff, put it out. Don't hold it back. If you put it out, your buyer will come to you. Teammates will come to you. Last tip, number 20 is write RFI responses. When you write RFI responses, the program office will begin to become aware of who you are. And if you write to a core competency, they're going to begin to trust you and maybe invite you in. So I went really fast. Brian, I'm going to have to take a look at your question later. But in this training, we talked about the 7-hour rule to get someone to know, like, and trust you, right? If you want a handout of the 20 ideas I mentioned, put 7-hour rule into the chat right now, and I will get that off to you. So if you don't know this, today was our 121st Federal Sales Training live here on LinkedIn. So I want you to put an appointment into your calendar to join me every day, 12 to 12:30 Eastern time, so that you can get more of this training. Don't wait for my invites to come out. Just put it on your schedule. I will be here every day, and I invite you to join me. I want you to remember that government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is having a great weekend, and I hope you do. I will see you next time.